Hello everyone, Sandrek here. So I've made quite a few videos on Baal, and this is going to be probably one of my more general ones on exactly how to build her. Now this one will not cover her kit at all. I'll be just talking as if you already know what her kit is doing. So if you do not know how her kit yet, please go check out my video on her kit. And of course, with that said, let's before we get started, there is a Baal giveaway. So hopefully I'll be able to help one of you guys, either a free to play or a low budget spender, to get your Baal. And it's gonna be a $100 giveaway. Of course, I cannot guarantee Baal with that, but the description is in the link below. Please go check it out. With that said, let's get started. So regarding how to gear Baal, we're going to go over section by section. Of course, first, how far you should level her up to. The second one is how to gear her in terms of artifacts, which substats to focus on, which main stats to choose. The third one is going to be her weapons, and of course the final one is going to be her talents, which ones to level up and by how much. So of course, with that said, let's get started. And of course, before we do that, just want to say this is going to be a pre-game analysis, so things might change after she gets released. People might realize one thing is better than the other, but these are all down through theoretical calculations, or sometimes these are just personal opinion. So do keep that in mind while you're watching this video. With that said, let's get started. So for Baal, one thing to note during her base ascension is that she has a very insanely high base attack. In fact, she has the 4th highest base attack in game so far. The top 3 is going to be Shao, the second place is I believe Eula and someone else, and quickly followed by Baal. So this is why she's going to be broken, and her damage rates are going to be lower than what you should be expecting because of her high base attack. So with this said, if you're going to play her anywhere other than as a battery, which means if you want her to do damage in any form, you should consider bringing her to level 90 or at least 80 out of 90 so that she can get that final base attack ascension. And of course, level 90 would be better. So with this said, this is how much you should level her, and if you don't, then if you use her as a battery, then level 70 to level 80 would be fine. And of course, worst case scenario, even if you're a new free to play player, you will want to level her above level 70 so she has both of the passives unlocked. As for ascension stats, I'll quickly go over this. I won't touch in too much detail. There isn't much you can farm at the moment other than the hand guards. The mob drop will be from the Sundering Manifestation, which is the Electro Oceanid. The local specialty is also not available right now, so all you can farm is the Electro Gemstones as well as the hand guard from the Samurai. That's the only 2 materials you can farm right now. Moving on to her artifacts, I would like to reference her Q. Now of course this is not in English for some reason, but in Chinese on the second last line it was stated that all form of damage she dealt during her Q, including her auto attack, her plunge attack, her charge attack, all counts as Q damage, which means then she would brain dead use the 4-piece emblem of severed fate, which is the new energy recharge set, because that set buffs her Q based off the energy recharge, and for the entire duration of 7 seconds of her Q, all of her Q counts as Q damage. So of course the 4-piece is essentially buffing her for the entire duration while she is in the katana state. So this is why you should always use the 4-piece on her. And of course, if you do not have the 4-piece built by them, some of the alternatives to look at: 2-piece of the year set, 2-piece of either attack increase, or Sundering Fury is something to look into as well. So that's going to be a good transition if you do not have the 4-piece emblem of severed fate done. As for the actual main stats to build her, it's going to be quite different from a normal DPS build. She is going to need an energy recharge stance because she does convert energy recharge into electro damage bonus, and on top of that, energy recharge is going to be her main focus. It also gives her more attack during her Q and things like that. So that's why you want to bring that stack on energy recharge on her. There is basically no ceiling, stack as high as you can. With that said, a safe, healthy amount you should be aiming for is around 250% to 300%. Now, 250% should be achievable once you have the correct main stats and decent role substats, whereas 300% is more like you need some insane good rolls to achieve that. But either way, you should be aiming for at least 250% energy recharge on him. For the circular position, bring crit. Most cases will be crit rate or crit damage depending on what you need. Of course, if you need more than 50% crit rate, bring crit rate. Otherwise, bring crit damage. And finally, for the goblet position, instead of electro damage bonus, you actually want to go attack percent. And the reason is one word: saturation. Now, I won't go into this in detail, but I've touched this several times. The way you calculate damage in Genshin is by multiplying 8 different multipliers together. And the way to maximize the product of 8 multipliers is to keep the multipliers as close to each other as possible. For example, here 3 times 5 is 15, 4 times 4 is 16, 16 is bigger than 15 because the difference between 4 and 4 is 0, whereas the difference between 3 and 5 is 2. That's a really quick math example here, but overall what I'm trying to say is the difference, because you don't have control over some of the multipliers, so the difference between crit damage, attack percent, and the elemental damage bonus, these three you should try to keep as close to each other as possible. And of course, there is a transition formula and stuff like that. I won't go into that in detail again. But the point here is that if she goes with the electro damage bonus, she's going to easily surpass past 100% electro damage bonus. And that is not good, given that her attack is also relatively high, but she doesn't really have a lot of ways to increase her attack other than in her Q state, of course. So in this case, stacking on attack for her goblet would means you are able to solve this situation. Because I've said before, 250% energy recharge would give her already enough to make up for an entire electro damage bonus goblet. So in this case, you're basically equipping an extra attack percent sands on top of the energy recharge sands, if that makes sense. So this is why you need to go attack percent, not energy recharge. Now, of course, if you still don't understand what I'm saying, it is still okay because this is more mass heavy stuff. But the point is, use attack percent goblet instead of electro damage bonus, and use energy recharge sands instead of attack sands. This is the main difference she has with normal DPS builds. Now, finally, going over the substats, of course, what you want to focus on is energy recharge first, then you want to focus on crit rate, and finally, you want to focus on attack. Everything else is okay. Elemental mastery is okay to add into the mix a little bit, but there is no need to focus on anything else. So, again, the top 3 focus is energy recharge is greater than double crit, which is greater than attack percent. Moving on to her weapon. Her weapon is actually very easy and straightforward. If you are a free to play, which means I'm expecting you to have 1 to almost no 5-star weapons, then the catch, which is going to be the new polearm, will be getting for free at R5. It's a 4-star polearm through the fishing event. This one is one of the 2 weapons we'll get for free for patch 2.1. This is the one you should use. Both the base attack is relatively low, but both the high energy recharge substats and also the very useful passive will be able to be used pretty well on Baal. This one is basically exclusively designed for Baal, and because of the fact that you can get it R5, you can even overpower R1 Skyward Spine in most cases. Now, for the rest of the weapons, if you are going for her actual weapon, which is Engulfing Lightning, that one is looking at around 25% damage increase on top of the catch's damage, and everything else, Staff of Homa, not really recommended, not because of the weapon is bad or anything, but it's sort of a waste to use on Baal because Baal doesn't really eat into HP any good, and on top of that she needs ER, not crit damage, and she doesn't really need attack bonus because she has a bunch. So overall, Staff of Homa not recommended, probably use on someone else. Again, as well, Vortex Vanquish are not really recommended because it's not consistent. The main difference is between Primordial Jade Wind Spear and Skyward Spine, and then the actual difference is that these two have very close damage output. Pick one of either of the two if you have both. The reason being that Primordial Jade Wind Spear needs stacks when she is on the field, but she only has 7 seconds. So as soon as that happens, then by the time her full stack is up, she is already halfway through her damage cycle for her Q. So this is why Primordial Jade Wind Spear takes a while to do that. As well, for Skyward Spine, she can take care of the energy recharge, converting that even more into her electro damage bonus. And on top of that, Skyward Spine does come with a normal attack speed boost, which is good for her Q. So overall, if you're looking at the weapons, it's going to be Engulfing Lightning is greater than Skyward Spine and Primordial Jade Wind Spear. And for 4 stars, I only recommend the catch. So that's all I have for her weapons. Now let's quickly go over her. Finally, before I end the video, let's quickly go over her stats and her skills and which ones to level up. So for her skills, My recommendation would be leveling up Q first, then E, then finally just leave auto as what it is, because her Q actually has its own rates for auto. So there's honestly no point leveling up her auto because her auto damage is not impressive. On top of that, that's all you need. And for her Q, everything that contributes damage to her Q is included in her Q skill. So when you level up the Q skill, everything is included in there. So there is no need to touch on auto at all. As for her E, it is good to bring it up to level 9. Now of course that is going to be very hard for most people because the elemental damage bonus, it resolves, levels up, and stops at level 9. Now of course, with that said, for Q probably for E probably level 6 is enough. For Q personally, I will bring it up to level 8. Now of course, this is an average build. If you really like her, double crown her would still be good. Finally, before we end, I just want to really quickly address a previous video comment which I did not make very well, because most people were saying I was attempting to promote you guys to spend more money. Now here is going to be the reason. The question is basically, should I go for her weapons or should I go for her constellations? The point is that her C2 was originally her C4. So if you can get to her C2 comfortably, I would recommend, even without getting the weapon, try to go for C2. Now of course, again, this is meant if you can get her C2 comfortably, or if you originally have plans or have enough pulls to get her to C2. So I am in no way encouraging free-to-play or low-budget spender to spend more money than their budget. And if you cannot comfortably get her to C2, instead I would recommend getting her weapon. Her C1 is okay, but it's not as big of a damage boost as her weapon. And moving on to her weapon is not as big of a damage boost as her C2. So overall, it's sort of weird between whether you should go for her weapon and her constellations. The idea is basically, if you're confident you can get her C2, then go for C2. However, if you're not confident of going for C2, then weapon is the better bet. So of course, with that said, that's all I have for you today. Thank you very much for watching. If you like the content, please consider subscribing. Thank you and have a nice day.